Welcome to the Canna-Manual podcast, hosted by Global Cannabinoid Solutions, the world's leading cannabis science firm and cannabis market entry specialists. We look forward to hearing your thoughts on this latest episode of Canna-Manual.
Hello, Kyle and Jillian. Thank you for coming on to this podcast with me. So today on this episode of the Canna-Manual podcast, we've got Trimble and Jillian Henderson, who are going to take us through the Canadian medical cannabis system, show us sort of what the access pathways are like for veterans at the moment, and particularly focusing on veterans' health, veterans' access, and the whole sort of medical process around that, and a bit and the sort of systems in between. And hopefully, well, what we're going to go for is a bit of a higher level from Jillian, and Carl's going to give us a bit of a frontline view of what it's like as well, to sort of go through that system as a patient as well. So just a little introduction to Kyle and Jillian are. So Jillian is a professional from the medical cannabis realm in Canada, who's been working to sort of educate doctors and help them understand cannabis medicines. And Kyle is a former service member of the Canadian Armed Services, who's been through that sort of military access pathway into medical cannabis, and he's going to talk us through some of that journey and what that whole process is like and what it's like as an experience. So thank you both for coming on. And just to kick things off, Jillian, would you mind sort of giving us a bit of an overview as to sort of where Canada's at the moment with cannabis, medical access, and sort of where are doctors up to as well? Like, what are their common views and what sort of challenges do you find at the moment with that? And yeah, maybe that'd be a nice place to start off.
Yeah, certainly. I'd be happy to do that, Chris. And thank you for having me on your program. So a little introduction about me. I'll just expand on what you said. Is I started working in the cannabis industry in Canada in 2016. And so I've been in it for over 5 years now. And as far as a high level view of how things are happening, I think we've gone through now altogether 5 iterations of what our legislation would be like in Canada, going way back to the early 2000s when medical cannabis even became a thought to be legal. It was legal in a very limited sense. And as I said, there have been 5 levels of legislation. Finally, now what we're working under is called the Cannabis Act. And that seems to be the one that's going to stick, at least for a while. And what that means to Canadians today is that there is medical access to cannabis through the authorization, through consultation with a medical doctor, or in some provinces with a nurse practitioner. I might also add, of late, I think it was October 2018, I believe, is when cannabis for recreational purposes became legal in Canada as well. Now, for today, for our topic, we'll stick to the medical side, but I just want to bring that up that for anyone who's watching this, we know today in Canada, it's pretty easily available. I mean, it seems like in some cities and towns, every corner has got a cannabis dispensary going on the recreational side. Now, back to the medical side, the way it works is that if someone feels that they could be a suitable candidate for cannabis as medicine, they seek a consultation with a doctor or nurse practitioner, like I said. That healthcare professional will determine if they are a good candidate, and if so, they'll create a medical document, and they'll medically authorize the person to purchase cannabis for medical purposes. There are organizations that have bloomed up in the last few years that are specialty medical cannabis clinics. And so the people who work there are highly knowledgeable and skilled in the specific areas, their specialty. Now, a person could choose to go to their regular family doctor who does, a whole hundreds and hundreds of different kinds of consultations, or the person could go to a specialty clinic of this nature. So once the person is vetted and determined that they are a good candidate, the doctor writes the authorization, and then the person, if they're going through a cannabis clinic, gets the support of a cannabis educator who helps them both on the education side and on the administrative side. And at that point, the person's medical document is forwarded to what we call an LP, or licensed producer. And these are organizations that are licensed by Health Canada to grow and sell cannabis in multiple forms. The person would place an order. They would receive that order in the mail, and that would be their monthly allotment, say, for their cannabis medicine. Could be in dried flower, it could be in oil, it could be a vaporizable product. It could be a topical that's rubbed on the skin. It could be a spray that's taken in the mouth. There's lots of different ways to go. But that's a quickie. I'll stop talking, but that's a quickie overview of what's going on in Canada these days.
Beautiful, Jillian. Thank you. So, given how efficiently Jillian's just described that system, Carl, would you say it was efficient for you? And is that the sort of experience that you had as well going through the sort of access points? Would you think that would, yeah, how much does that align, should I say?
Yeah, it's bang on. Jillian's actually the one who walked me through the process. It was amazing. It was like having a cannabis concierge. You know, the process for me was quite simple. I filled out the quick application. I guess after 6 months, I ended up becoming a veteran, getting medical release, and everything got covered. I had my prescription for 3 grams a day. Veterans Affairs in Canada does cover our prescriptions. It's just been smooth sailing. I actually just had a appointment with my doctor the other day. You know, it's thorough, but quite quick. They check in on you, how things are going. You know, general doctor's appointment, and then within about 10 minutes, you get a call from your Jillian said their title. I forget.
Cannabis educator.
Cannabis educator. There you go. So you get a call from the cannabis educator, and if they ask you if they have any questions, they're amazing. I mean, now it's been several appointments, so I don't really have any questions for them, but it's still fantastic that they call and that you have the opportunity to ask a question.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like a really nice service, because I was going to touch here on some of the knowledge of the doctors, but it seems as though cannabis educators such as yourself, Jillian, sort of fill that gap. And it's something that's not been really touched over here in the UK. Is like, okay, so the doctor's not really sure most of the time. There's still very little guidance around it. But then also, yeah, once the patient gets that, you don't have almost a concierge or follow-up. That sounds like a really sort of well thought through service. Jillian, you looked like you were going to mention something there, just to carry on. Carl.
Yeah, well, as we've explained, there's sort of 2 ways to go about it. A person can choose to go with their own regular primary care physician, get accepted as a medical cannabis patient, and then they're sent on their way to sort of figure out the rest on their own. But the doctors in Canada who are really interested and fascinated by this realm have gravitated to the clinics, those specialty clinics I mentioned, cannabis clinics. So they still do family practice, and then they tend to do some work with the specialty clinics. And those doctors tend to be much more knowledgeable because it's just their thing. And we're rubbing shoulders with the cannabis educators, who not only can provide, the cannabis educators don't provide medical advice. We're very careful not to cross any lines there. But what the cannabis educators can do is they're quick to know the level of customer service of these different licensed producers. Some of these LPs are, well, just frankly easier to work with than others, more organized on their end. The cannabis educators will know which products are in stock right now and which are, say, back ordered. It is a plant, because everything's direct from the cannabis plant, and everything has to grow up, and there is a timeline for maturing these plants. And the educators will do these follow-up phone calls and provide the time to talk to a patient like Kyle in a way that Kyle can ask lots of questions that just wouldn't be realistic to ask of the doctor, because the doctor has to move on and maybe see multiple patients in a day. Whereas the educators are more built in to have the time to spend, like, the patient says, well, how do I administer this oil? I don't know what to do with it. Well, you got the syringe and you work it this way, and this is what you want to look out for, and things like that. So it really is a really well-oiled machine and a highly valuable system, which I think Kyle can attest to about the level of service and how he's been able to work through that. Yes.
So my next question, I guess, is almost a bit of a double-pronged one. One for, Jillian or Kyle, please feel free to take a stab at this. But is there much of an issue with, I guess, people, I say issue, in the UK, and the reason I'm asking this, to ramble on a bit, people do sometimes cultivate their own personal supply. Is that something that, you guys have encountered, or like, what's the sort of system over there, or how is that policed as well, potentially?
Okay. Kyle, do you want me to take that one?
Yeah, go ahead, and I can maybe take a stab at the end.
Okay, sure. So also that legislation I mentioned called the Cannabis Act does allow for GYO, that stands for grow your own. And so this, again, we'll go back to this patient that we're talking about, could go to the medical doctor, say, I want to be accepted or licensed to have rights to grow my own on the medical side. I shouldn't get too far ahead of myself here, because the recreational side also allows up to 4 plants per household, and you don't need a note for that from the doctor.
Right.
You can just grow it. Now, if you're a medical patient and you want to grow your own, you can also go that route. I should point out one of the big differences between the medical side and the recreational side is that the cost on the medical side, if you're out of pocket to pay for your medicine, can be deducted from your income taxes in Canada, not so on the recreational side. So that would be another reason that if someone truly has a medical condition, they really should go through the medical system, because there are lots of benefits like doctor supervision, income tax deduction, a duty to accommodate at the employers at the place of work. These are all reasons to go medical if you have a true medical condition. But if you don't have a medical condition, go the rec side, grow it at home. You're good. You're good to go under the Cannabis Act. But there are definitely differences and reasons to choose medical if you're a legit medical patient. Kyle, did you want to add on to that?
Yeah, just on the recreational side, like I know several guys who it's actually turned into a hobby, and including veterans with using it medicinally, because it's such a detailed activity, growing these plants. It's not like having a general house plant. There's a lot that goes into it. So for me, it's too much. I don't think I have it in me to grow my own, but I have several friends who do, and not only are they getting the product out of it, but they're actually getting a hobby out of it, which for your mental health is fantastic.
So now we've talked about the actual consumption of it slightly there, and the access to that supply. How much of a stigma is there around cannabis on the medical side, but also on the sort of veteran side as well? Like, there's a lot of sort of, stigma still present in the UK. And again, I'd sort of asked that in the sense that, has there been a bit of a transition as well that you're seeing? Is there a progression, or what's the sort of mindset and, professional perspectives on cannabis that you found as patients and as doctors as well?
Well, I always say, definitely having been doing this now for over 5 years, I have seen in the past, in 2016, still big stigma back then. Doctors were saying, I wouldn't touch that in a 10-foot pole, kind of back then. Nowadays, things have changed largely. I think it's come to be accepted. Doctors understand it's here. The toothpaste is out of the tube. It's not going back in. And those who want to get involved are, and those that don't want to get involved aren't. But I don't think it's a big black cloud, of this stigma that it used to be. I think people are afraid, if we legalize it, the sky's going to fall, crashes on the highway, big messes all over the place. It hasn't happened. I walk down the street, or drive down the street, I go past these recreational shops, which are much more visible than going through the medical side. It's not really as evident, but the shops are all there, and just life goes on. It's pretty much, treated on the recreational side, treated similarly to liquor and alcohol. You got to if you're going to drink, drink responsibly. If you're going to consume cannabis, consume responsibly. Don't be stupid, and just carry on. And I mean, a little side story, but I know police officers who've said they would much rather deal, if they're going to say there's something going on, they have to make an arrest. They'd much rather make an arrest of someone who's high on cannabis than drunk on liquor. Because if someone's been drinking, they're just tend to be belligerent and ready to fight. People who are high, or the medical term is euphoria, but people who've been smoking pot will just whatever.
Yeah.
so just a little, I thought that was interesting.
Well,
so.
I've heard the same in the UK as well, Jillian, from British policemen and women who've you get a lot of abrasion with, say, the alcohol consumers, but cannabis, it's more so because someone's complained about them, as opposed to actually like the smell or the reporting, rather than necessarily a violent or aggressive offense or interaction. For those who don't really know what that consumption experience is like, Kyle, would you be able to sort of help people understand your use of cannabis as a medicine and sort of, I guess, debunk some of that for people who don't know what cannabis is like, or they're scared about psychosis or something like, could you sort of fill in some of the blanks there for people watching?
So first off, I'll say with my mental health situation, I ended up on clonazepam which is a benzodiazepine, for several years. I think it was close to 3 years. That is, in my opinion, not where I should be. It's a medication that is almost too effective. It zeroes your anxiety, so then you're not actually capable of dealing with the anxiety and learning to cope with it. It's a complete avoidance mechanism, and also you continuously need more and more and more. When it came to cannabis, it doesn't make it go away, but it makes it tolerable. It allows me actually on bad anxiety days to sort of slow my thoughts down, so that I'm able to use my cognitive behavioral therapy skills, CBT skills, and tools. That's not something that I ever thought I'd be able to do. When I was a kid, there was some recreational use, and I never imagined it as a medicine, but I'm so grateful that I found it through Jillian, because, like I said, it slows down the thinking. It allows you to sort through things. As for my dosage, my prescription's 3 grams a day. That's what it's been the whole time. There have been several days when I was several years ago now, when I was really depressed. I was using much more than my prescription. It was sometimes I'd go to the garage and I was so depressed that I'd say to myself, Kyle, you're gonna smoke until you smile or you puke, because this is unmanageable, what I was feeling. So my tolerance got really high at that point. And then I've never ever been in psychosis, and to be honest with you, I've never even puked from smoking cannabis. If you smoke a cigarette after smoking a whole bunch of cannabis, maybe you might get sick. That's what happened to me. But without the nicotine and tobacco, everything is very good.
Could you clarify that a bit? Sorry, Carl, to jump in. What is the form of consumption you use as well? Because again, I know everyone's automatic imagination, if they're not used to it, will be, oh, what does he just roll a big joint and fill it full of cigarettes and smoke it like that? How is that medicine? But really, could you sort of clarify some of that as well for us?
Yeah, so early on, I bought myself Stores and Bickle Mighty, which is a big handheld vaporizer. And it's just my favorite handheld vaporizer. Um, they they make like medical devices. So since being a veteran, my Veterans Affairs will cover a portion of a vaporizer, and then I'm with Spectrum Therapeutics is my LP. Um, so they cover the rest because I'm a veteran. So that means after release, I was able to get a Volcano vaporizer, which is an expensive unit made by the same company, but they're a fantastic unit. It's, in my opinion, the cleanest, most effective way to use dried flower. I mean, it's different than oil or edibles or whatever that you're into. I find edibles and oil just make my tolerance go up. So I've now got it to where on a work day I work 12-hour shifts, plus an hour drive on each end. So on days like that, I'll just have about a gram, whatever fits into one cycle of my Volcano vaporizer, and that's it for the night. On a day like today where I'm not at work, I'm at home, I'm doing this, I'll smoke my or vaporize my prescription, like the full 3 grams. I find my anxiety is actually a little bit worse when I'm at home because there's so many directions I can go. Whereas at work, there's a set schedule and things I got to do and take care of. And yeah.
Not to mention young kids as well, Carl.
Yes, young kids, 3 and 5.
You mentioned there, Carl, work and driving. I guess Jillian as well, what's the legislation around this and what's your guidance as well, Kyle? What is the guidance for people who prescribe cannabis?
You can go ahead, Kyle.
Sorry, I left that a bit arbitrary.
So like legally, you're not supposed to smoke and drive. That's like cut and dry. Do I find myself doing it? I mean, I use cannabis on the regular. It doesn't make me high. Like I don't smoke to get like super stoned. I just smoke to let the anxiety get a little bit better. So it's a much different level. And once you're so used to having it into your system, you're almost feeling more normal with it in your system. So in my experience, within 2 hours of intake with my vaporizer, I won't drive. But after that, I find that I'm just very level. So I have driven. I guess I don't find myself needing to. Most of the time when I vaporize my cannabis, I'm home now, kind of thing. Yeah, so it's not. I mean, I wouldn't recommend to anyone getting high and then going driving. Like it's getting super stoned and then going driving is just not a good idea. It's akin to drinking and driving, of course. I'm talking about a different level. That's all.
Yeah, I'll sort of throw my comment in there too, is that it's really important to make the distinguishing factor about because cannabis is such a catch-all phrase, but the part that makes you high or get the euphoria is the THC, tetrahydrocannabinol. And then that's a very well-known aspect of cannabis. And then there's CBD, cannabidiol. And CBD does not create the euphoria feeling, the THC does. And then there's well over 80 other cannabinoids in the mixture of this, we call it the entourage effect. Most of these many factors that come into catch-all phrase, cannabis. What I know and how I manage things, as being that I'm a medical patient myself, is I'll have a CBD oil in the morning, which helps manage, say, inflammation. But that oil's got next to nothing of THC, like 0.0001 something. So I take what I call yellow oil from Spectrum in the morning, and then at night to help with sleep, that's when I take a balanced oil. So it's roughly half THC content, half CBD content. And I find that helps me to get to sleep and stay asleep throughout the night and get really good quality sleep too. So myself, I won't consume THC and then go drive my car. And so when I'm having that, what I call the yellow oil, which is the CBD in the morning, that does not cause any euphoria. It does not play on the brain in a psychoactive way. So that's how I manage it. And that's how someone like a cannabis educator would also answer those kinds of questions for a patient. So again, a doctor doesn't have time to go into a lot of the minutiae, but the cannabis educator does. So that's how I think people like myself and Kyle handle it, is I keep the THC to nighttime. When I know I'm in the house for the night and I'm not going anywhere, that's when I'll take it. And that's the only time I'll take it. Yeah. Oh, you're muted.
Amateur. A bit of a question for the pair of you. As both currently using it medicinally, and we'll use this as a bit of a final question, do you both see yourselves using it for the longer term? And again, compared to other medicines that you've tried, how would you've obviously switched for a reason now, without putting words in your mouth, I say, but how would you sort of, how sustainable do you find cannabis as a medicine, and the side effects as well, to talk about some of those, like, yeah, how manageable are those and how much of an impact are those as well?
Kyle, you want to dive into that one?
Yeah. Actually, Jillian, do you want to go first, and then
Okay.
I'll collect my thoughts?
Okay. All right. So your question was, do I see this as a long-term thing, and how do I manage side effects while I'm consuming cannabis? Is that right, Chris?
Yeah.
Yes, I do see it as a long-term thing. It's already been several years for me, and I have noticed that I've reduced, actually down to zero, any dependence on anti-inflammatories like the ibuprofen, naproxen, naproxen type things. So yeah, and it's helped with the sleep. I used to get a lot of headaches, and which I attributed partly to not getting good sleep, but it was a bit of a downward spiral. I don't sleep, so I get headaches, and then I get headaches, and then I can't really rest and sleep the brain. So it was a dual hit there. So I found, since I started going down the medical stream, I've been able to better manage my sleep, reduce my headaches, reduced inflammation, and there goes with it some, say, chronic pain. So definitely I see this as a long-term thing for my benefit. As far as managing side effects, I really haven't had any, except maybe on occasion dry mouth. That's one of those adverse events that I consider quite minor, but you just got to be aware of it. Yeah. It's just kind of a pasty mouth, but you just drink. I just drink a lot of water, and it's a good thing to drink water anyway. So it just sort of just all plays into each other quite nicely. I want to make sure that the listeners are understanding there are some adverse events that are more serious and need to be attributed or considered. One is we don't want euphoria when we're going to be operating heavy machinery or driving or making major life decisions. But if you do consume too much, there is something called, I'm going to pronounce this correctly, emeresis, which is vomiting, excessive vomiting. And there's a chance for psychosis. If you have too much THC, too strong all at once, that you can go into some level of psychosis. But what you don't find, and this is a big distinction, comparing cannabinoids to opioids, is opioids will actually act on the center of the brain that the side effect is it represses the respiratory system. And then when people have an overdose and die from an opioid, it's because they stop breathing because the brain got affected, because the opioids binded to those receptors in the brainstem. If you're in a cannabinoid, it doesn't affect the breathing, or it doesn't repress our respiratory system. So people don't overdose on cannabis because they stop breathing. So I just want to bring that up as a distinction. And a lot of people have found they cut back on their opioids and they picked up on their cannabinoids and got the same or better positive effect and cut way back on the negative side effects. So That's my take on it. Kyle?
Yeah, so I'm actually similar to you with I no longer use Tylenol, Advil, or whatever brand or medicine that you use. I don't use that any of that stuff anymore. I do have 5 physical injuries from the military, and all of them cause me some pain, but the cannabis helps with the pain dramatically. Um, and I've been able to manage dose, unlike as I alluded to earlier with clonazepam. I just continuously needed more of the benzos, whereas with this, I've been able to reduce how much I'm taking in as time goes on, which has been great. It's shown me that. It's strictly an anxiety thing. Like sometimes I've had the thoughts of like, oh my god, am I addicted? But I only use it when I'm anxious. I'm unfortunately anxious all the time. um, so I spend like my work days, for example, like 14-hour day, and I sort of do battle with myself through the day, and I talk about it, and that's my active therapy time. But then as soon as I get home, I know that I'm in for the night. I get vaporize, and yeah, it's definitely, I think, going to be a long-term thing for me. I think that the amount that I'm consuming will change, just the ups and downs of life. But I think that it'll definitely be part of my life. Yeah.
I think that might be a nice point to wrap things up. I think that's been quite intense crash course in cannabis and the patient perspective as well. Thank you so much, guys, for sitting down with me and going through some of that. And thank you so much for sharing your perspectives and your insights on this. And well, I think we'll have to do another one and keep sort of scaling up these conversations, because there's I think we're just sort of scratching the surface of some of it, and there's a lot of wider topics that we could rope in. But yeah, thank you both for your time today and for sharing your wisdom with everyone. And we'll speak to you both.
All right. Well, thank you for having us, and best luck of how things will develop in the UK to open this up, because there's a lot of people in medical need. And I think it's a shame to keep this under wraps. Because cannabis has been medical for over 5,000 years. It's just in the 1920s that it became a bad word, and now in the 2000s it's coming back. So so I hope that things to go well in the UK as well, and that legislation opens up and helps people to feel better along the way.
Oh, getting there slowly.
Yeah.
Chris, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure. I definitely look forward to doing it again. And as you say, we just scratched the surface. There's a lot more to talk about.
Yeah.
I think we'll do some questions and answers next time. And if we get feedback and comments on this, we'll start a bit more of a conversation and make it a bit more, questions from the audience perhaps. But thank you both so much.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of the Canna-Man podcast. For more information on how you can safely navigate the cannabis ecosystem, take a look at some of our educational materials or reach out to us at www.globalcannabinoidsolutions.com. We look forward to you joining us on the next episode of the Canna-Man podcast.